Network. I think it does it. Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Hello
you.
guys. Okay, thank you. So welcome to another session. We're focused on pattern recognition and pattern discovery and data storytelling. So just give me a few minutes, let me share my screen and we should be good. I believe you can see my screen. Please let me know if you can't. But I'll assume that you can see my screen. So basically, what's pattern recognition? So from the name itself, it's quite self-explanatory, right? It's about discovering recurring patterns and regularities in the data. It's about having digging deep into your data and discovering insights, discovering things that can lead you to insights that might not have been otherwise obvious, right? Without that deep diving. So the whole essence of, let me do this way so it's better. Sorry, just give me a minute, guys. Having a bit of, okay. So the whole essence of pattern recognition, sorry about that, is to make informed decisions, right? So in a business, in an organization, you want to be sure that whatever business decisions you're making concerning the business, whatever paths you're leading the business into, is guided by data, is backed by data, right? So that's the whole point of pattern recognition. That's the whole point of data analysis. So you want to help your bosses, you want to help yourself as a member in the organization, as a stakeholder, to make informed decisions. Then it also helps with fraud detection. So when we're able to like observe patterns, you're able to tell what patterns lead to certain activities, right? So sometimes I'll give you an example. So at some point I tried to monitor the logs of a tool that I was using to orchestrate like workflow, right? And then I was able to observe that, okay, at certain points, at certain when he has to process this amount of data, it weighs down on the resources and then it restarts without fully running the process to the end. All that I did that by the workflow tool I was using was Airflow, and what I did was to analyze the logs because I was trying to look for a pattern as to when, okay, why does this repeat itself and how can I analyze and discover a pattern to this? And that's one of the things that pattern discovery does, right? It helps you to spot anomalies and suspicious activities in it could be financial transactions, like I've mentioned, yeah, network security, or it could be whatever other like facet of business, product recommendation, medical diagnosis. These are some other use cases that we have with pattern recognition. So, and next year we have exploratory data analysis for pattern discovery and recognition. The very like fundamental step, right, to pattern discovery is exploratory data analysis. It is at the point of exploring your data visually or via whatever tools you decide to use. It is at that point you're able to discover patterns in your data. So you can't rush over the exploratory phase. You cannot rush over the exploratory analysis phase. That might take the longest. You see, there's always an ongoing joke, right, among data analysts, data professionals about how data cleaning sometimes can take the longest time. Right next to that is the exploratory phase as well, because you want to fully understand your data. You want to fully look at your data from various angles so that you can come up with ideas about your data. You can also come up with questions. Like I've listed here, you need to develop an understanding of the data, need to define what you want to know from the data, ask questions and let your curiosities guide you. You're a data professional, right? So definitely you're going to have questions about certain behaviors you're seeing in your data. Go ahead and try to get answers to those questions. That's one thing I want to point out also as an observation from the just concluded project presentation. Don't be afraid to look out for other data sources. Sometimes you're working on a project and the current data source that you have does not answer the questions enough, right? So don't limit yourself to the data you currently have. You might need more context to fully appreciate, like to fully answer the questions you're trying to answer. And that's why as a data professional, domain knowledge is very important. Domain knowledge of whatever field your data is in is very, very, very important. And to be fair, that's kind of like where the world is heading to right now. The whole data space is heading to. You must have domain knowledge in whatever field you are working with data in. So it's not uncommon for you to reach out to professionals in that field to ask questions about the data you're working with, right? So that's one way that you will develop an understanding. That's one way that you'll be able to answer questions concerning your data. So yeah, we've talked about developing an understanding of your data. This is something we've done in the past. And then understanding the relationships between variables in your data. This is one way to discover patterns in your data, right? And then visualizing patterns within groups, like visualizing patterns with groups, right? So like I said, your role as a data professional, data analyst, is to tweak your data in several ways. Don't just work with what you've been given. Imagine have questions, ask your data several questions, right? Tweak the data, form features on your own that you can use to analyze and try to tweak out and get some patterns from the data. Okay, so that's it for this slide. So now we're just going to be we're going to be continuing from where we stopped last week, where we worked on food population data set. So just give me a minute, I'll share my screen and we'll pick up from that. In the meantime, though, do you have any questions, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, go on.
Yes, we've not been able to download the data sets on the Onamoye website because I think it requires that we have an ID. Some other person said that I don't know, there are a lot of people that had to complain. I was also asking the same question. If I don't know how we are supposed to access the data sets. but we're not able to get them.
Has anybody been able to access it?
No,
I
ma.
don't think
Okay, so nobody on the call has been able to access. All right, I'll look into that and get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Um, okay.
Yeah, hello, ma.
Yes, go on.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question. So when you're talking about we should not limit ourselves to the data that we have. So do you mean we can join several data together so that we can analyze
Yes,
it?
yes, exactly. You
Okay,
can,
from different
you can,
source.
yes, from different sources you can join, but then the way you ask that different sources, you have to be very careful about the sources you get. Since, like I've always said, because it's external data, you don't have much control over how it was generated or how it was gotten. So you want to be sure that whatever source you get your data from, it's a valid source, right?
Oh,
So,
I
but
see.
yes, you can get data from various sources to complement the data that you currently have. All right. Okay, so in the absence of any other questions, we'll pick this up. So we were able to clean up our data and we started running some um started doing some exploratory analysis on it. And we were able to discover, oh, South Africa for the last year, which was 2021, South Africa had the most like production of crops. So now I came up with a question, right? Because does South Africa have the most record in comparison to the others? So if you get involved in machine learning, you will understand that sometimes imbalance can lead to poor performing models. And this is like a case of that, right? Where this can be a false positive, where we think, oh, South Africa making most production. When in reality, what's really happening is just that South Africa had the most records in this data set. So one thing that we can do is just try, I'm not sure if everything here, the session is active. Let me just see. Let me run this. Okay, so I'll have to run this. Okay. Um, okay, initially we're looking at 2021. So let's just stick with that for now. Oh, that's true. Okay, so this, right? Now we want to take a look at the record count, right? So one way to do that is we can decide to group by country. After grouping by country, we can decide to do a count of the values. Okay, let me just select the year for this. All right. So with this, we should be able to have, we can already observe that our records are pretty much the same. Algeria, but then there are some records that are not the same, right? So this is definitely going to affect our data, because if we are having records that are not the same, and then we go ahead to say, oh, this is the list, this is not in the top 10, that's a problem, right? So we're already like, our data from the very beginning is not in the best shape, and we're already misinforming our audience, because we are working with the assumption that, oh, we had all the records for all the years, and from all the years that we had, this is the information we're able to get. So one thing that we can do, if you can spot from here, we see Ethiopia former, we see Sudan former from our last class, right? So one thing we can do is we can merge. Let's just inspect this. Let's inspect this for Ethiopia.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
I saw something under like from this list. There's something under Nigeria called Reunion or something. I don't think it's a country.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank. All right. We'll look into that.
Thank you.
So we have Ethiopia, right? And has about 32 rows and covering 1961 to 1992, right? So we'll just take care of this. Let's see if we try to do this for, I might have to do this in another row. So we said 1961 to 1992, and then this is from 1993 to 2021. Okay, so for the sake of this class, we'll just assume that they are both right. Like I said, we don't have access to this source. We don't know why it was labeled Ethiopia former versus Ethiopia. But then let's reconcile this. Let's join them together, right? And assume that Ethiopia former is the same thing as Ethiopia, right? So I will do that by simply for the country, I'm going to replace Ethiopia former with Ethiopia. Okay. So if we run this, we shouldn't see this anymore. Okay, so, and this should, oh wow. Okay, you guys are not paying attention. Nobody corrected my spelling. This is how I know that it appears like I'm the only one in this class.
Yeah, we see, ma.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you did not observe that the spelling was incorrect. Anyway, so we'll just correct that quickly. All right. So this will be the case for like all of all the rest, including Sudan that has a form as well. So we'll do the same thing for Sudan. We'll take out, let's just take a look at reunion and see what it looks like. Yeah, it's not a very, I don't think reunion is a valid country. So we'll take it out. We'll take out the reunion data sets, right? The reunion, the rows that have reunion in them. And then the next thing we'll also do is we'll take care of we've taken care of Ethiopia, we should take care of Sudan, former as well. And that should be it. We'll also drop all the ones that have that are less than 61, right? So let's do that for Sudan. Yeah, best I copy this. Okay. So some other things that we can do, right? As part of, you see that cleaning your data never really ends, right? Some other things, like I said, we can do is we can drop the countries that are less than 60. But we won't do that for now. Let's just go ahead and try to run some analysis on the data that we have. Since we fixed Sudan and the others, right? So anything less than that shouldn't be much of a problem for now. So let's go ahead and work with data that we have. I would like to write this to this CSV. Okay. So yes, I'm using the Altair library and Seaborn for visualization. And then, of course, we import our data sets. We take a look at it. I probably go back to this and try to make the index false because I don't like to see that the index was picked. Okay, and then we will drop the continent data, right? Okay, so here do we have, we don't have the continent data available here. So we already have total produced, which we calculated from this point, right? Before we did all of this. So yes, so everything is in order, right? So there's no need for us to do this. And we already know the countries that we have and all of that. So next thing I would want us to do, right, is to take a look at the behavior of like the production count over the last 10 years, right? So what's the production been like over the last 10 years? One thing that I talked about at the start of the class is that with trying to discover patterns, you want to view your data from as many angles as possible, right? So you want to do as much visualization as possible. Just try to view your data from just as many angles as possible, because that's how you're going to be able to see and discover trends that you couldn't see before, right? So like one thing that we could have done here, right, upon discovering that, oh, South Africa, Morocco, Mozambique, and all of these countries have, like, they're in the top region, we could have decided, okay, what about for the last 2 years, right? So I might have just included 2020 here and said, okay, so how about for like the last 2 years, is it still the same thing? And then I think this, let's see, DF head. So I think this gives us hue, which we can use to plot the year. And we are able to see, was this trend, is it consistent over the past like 2 years? Do we still have the top countries among the top like producing countries when we compare the past 2 years? And we see that South Africa has been pretty consistent in being the top producing country, and a lot of the other countries that stay top are also, we see some increases in a country like Tanzania, right? We see some interesting discoveries. So these are some of the things that you want to do while you are exploring your data. It's not just to plot one or two charts and then call it a day. You're taking time to explore your data. So back to here, we're trying to look at for the past 10 years. I already have some of this written out here, so I'll just be explaining what some of it is doing. So here I'm basically just filtering for the last 10 years, 2011 to 2021. So if I run this, you should see what we have. And then I don't want to have to deal with all of these columns, and that's where the filter comes in, right? So I just filter for the total produced. I can just call this right. So I filter for average, although I do not have the average here yet, right? So I'll just take this out. But I have the year, I have the country, and I have the total produced. So if I run this, and then we try to see this, we see that we now have a data frame with all of the excesses cut out. We just have the total tons, like that's the sum of everything, all the crops for each country and each year, right? And so moving on, let's say that we want to just plot it, we want to take a look at, we want to plot our graph, right? And see, okay, for the past 10 years, what has it been like? So here we have this chart. I'm using Altair here. Why I opted for the Altair like library as opposed to Seaborn for this class is that with this kind of large data set, right, and with the fact that you're doing exploratory analysis, you want to be able to take advantage of some of the interactiveness that Altair offers us. Another library you can use is Plotly, right? But since we handled Altair in internship. That's what we're going to be working with. So you want to take advantage of the interactivity that it gives us to be able to hover over your data and see something. So let's just see that everything is in order. We don't really, excuse me, we don't need this interval for now. So yeah, this is just specifying like the type of data you're working with, specifying the total, but we don't have total, we have total produced. So we'll fix that in there. So remember when we talked about this is MACLine, basically just going to produce a line chart, a line graph, right? That's will show us what we need. Okay. Okay, so this is what we have for production for in the last 9 years, right? So if I try to come here, I see that, okay, this is for Sao Tome, and I come down here, I see that this is South Africa, which is interesting, right? It appeared to us like South Africa, okay, for the latest year, 2021, South Africa was actually the top producer, but it didn't always start out that way, right? It's interesting to see that at the start of like 20 of this of the last decade, right? It did not always start out with South Africa being at the top of production. That's an interesting discovery, right? And this, like I said, let your curiosities guide you. This lends itself to a great number of questions. So if it did not always start out like that, what led to improvements? What do I need to know about South Africa and that has happened to South Africa in the last 10 years that has led to what governmental policies might South Africa have introduced, right? That might have led to this increment in production. These are some of the questions you want to ask yourself, some of the things that we mean when we say let your curiosities guide you, because otherwise you are just going to produce a blank words. You're just going to produce a graph that, I mean, ChatGPT can equally produce, and there will be no difference. You get? So the difference is that you have a human element to it, and so you have questions that you can ask, right? You can spot trends which can lead to deeper questions. So this is a line graph, right? Displaying all of this. Now let's go ahead and try to see using some other charts, right? Here I have a bar chart. So I'm just going to uncomment this and let's see. So this is basically doing the same thing, marking our x-axis, the country is offset. You see what this does, right? And then the total, we need to fix that. Yeah, we need to fix this here in our tooltip as well. Then total production by country. Yeah, what's the problem? Okay, there's a mistake in our column name. So now we have an interesting graph here that lets us see something similar to what we've seen here, that there are some countries that have been in the top category, and that this can basically be called outliers because we have how many countries here? We have about 50 something, I think 51 countries here. And then out of 51, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Just about 5 countries that are above consistently above 400 million, right? This is here 400 million. So like the rest are below that. In fact, the range is somewhere here. right? So this, if you were to like judge production, I mean, if you were, because one thing you need to know about exploratory data analysis, it's a step that leads to like, it can lead to many different outcomes, right? It can lead to storytelling like we're doing now. It can also lead to machine learning, right? Where you want to do some predictions. So, but in a situation where you wanted to do some predictions and you decided, oh, okay, you were going to include these countries in your model, there's going to be a huge problem, right? Because these are not the norm. This is the norm. We have production under here. And so somehow you need to include this on an average, a typical expectation for total production falls here. So that's one thing that we get to see that very few countries like are actually doing over the top with the production that they are like releasing. Do you get in the past 10 years, the production that they have done in those countries, which again leads to several questions. What is it about these countries? What do these countries share that has been leading to this? Is in fact even leads to, is this data sets valid? I mean, several questions can come. Another graph here. So let me see. So this is equally a bar graph. This is equally a bar chart, sorry. Plotting still the same last 10 years data set. So this is specifying, excuse me, this is specifying the year, specifying the country as well. I think this is basically similar to this one. Yeah. So okay, here I decided that we should use the average as opposed to the total. Okay. So let's see how that works. Okay. Right now, we don't have an average column in our data set, so we would have to create that. So let's see. Okay. So we did something similar for when we were doing some. So let's just get that and have it produce our average for us. So I'm going to introduce that at this point. Let me see. Yeah, at this point should work. I just want it to be for the last 10 years, right? So okay, yeah. Okay, so this should give us what we want. What this is doing is basically selecting all the rows, because it has to select from the second column, right? So iLock is like position based as opposed to lock that is like label based. selection. So this would just pick out based from the position that we have specified, it will pick that out, and then it should give us the mean, right? And it should not do this. It shouldn't include the very last column. So that should work. Yeah. Let's see what we have when we run this. Okay. So now we'll go back to our data where we wanted to plot our graph. And did we define that to be DF1? Okay. Yes, we need to fix our definition of DF1. So here we're just filtering for average included in this. So we see it schedule. So now we can go ahead and try and see it from the point of the average here. You can see that there's interactivity with this. So like you can expand this, work on this, whatever you want to do, right? So that's because of this interactive method that I called here. If it looks strange, go back to the Altair tutorial or go to the documentation and walk through it. So yeah, we should run this, and then we see like average country. So at this point now, we get to see, okay, so do we have the same like countries when we take the average as opposed to the total? So here we had Sao Tome. So if we go down here, we still have the same thing. So it's safe. We can go through all of this and check all of this, right? That's why I said exploratory data analysis it takes time. We are literally, and it's not uncommon as well to have a point um in your notebook, right, where you're documenting your findings. Right, so you discover something, you document your findings, you document further questions that you want to ask. That's something that tends to happen. So here I'm grouping by countries, and I'm getting the total and taking the mean because I want to do some further analysis into the top 10, right? So I've seen the behavior of this, I've seen like by like how far they surpass the rest of the country. So I want to do some further analysis into this, right? So that's what this is doing. I'm simply selecting the largest 10 countries here. Okay, yeah, let's select first. What's this about? Okay, total produced. Should have just changed the column at the very beginning, change the column name as opposed to this constant replacement. But all the same. Okay, so we have this grouping by country, and we see what countries are doing the best, right? I'm taking the mean of this, right? So one thing about the mean is that if they are very large values within, it will be skewed in the direction of those very large values. So that's why we like to say the mean is not the most appropriate measure of central tendency, but it's not useless. It's useful in some cases. And in this case, we just want to get a general sense of what are top countries I mean, they're already featuring, we already know that this is valid because South Africa already does like feature among the top countries, Morocco, Mozambique, and this, right? So we are not out of order. So yeah, these are some of the questions I asked. Are there regions where certain crops perform better? But then let's continue with this where we wanted to figure out looking at doing further analysis into these countries, right? So I have another data frame here. So at this point, I just copied this, could have just set this, picked the country, and as opposed to copying this out, but since this is already here, so we have this, and then we have like those countries that we say are in our top 10, and then we want to do some further analysis on them. So let me uncomment this. Fix this. I think I have a Mac area. Yes, so I'll just run that instead, as opposed to this gives us an interesting view, right? So this, like I said, you must view your data from different points. There's a point, this gives us an interesting view of the last production in the last 10 years. But I want to show you something else where I actually used the mark area and where it really came to shine, where this really came to shine, right? I know our time is almost up, but let me just quickly show you that so that you can literally like see the importance, the glaring importance of trying out different charts. So here, let's see, okay. Let's see what's happening here. At this point, I tried, we're grouping this by year, the original data frame, right? We group by year. I'll just run this, right? So that you can see. Group by year and then get the sum of each of, so I basically want to get, I've eliminated countries in a way, right? So I basically just want to get the sum of all the crops each year, right? I want to know how are the crops performing themselves. We've looked at it on a country basis. Another way we want to look at it is crop basis. How are these crops actually performing? That's what this is doing. So I group by the year, I take the sum. So numeric only just ensures that, yeah, you have total produced here, but it doesn't matter that it was summed, just focus on what we know we want to use. So now we can reset the index because we're going to need it that way at some point. And then so because of how these graphs tend to be plotted, right? So this is not the format we want it to be in. It will be much easier if we can get this into a column, right? If we can get all of this into a column, that way it will be much easier like to put into our plotting functions and work with them. So that's basically just what this is doing, changing this into long form data. So long form data frame rather. And then basically, I specify that I want to keep year. I want the new column to be crop, and then every other thing will be collapsed into the crop column, and then the value that should, so where we have 1961, we have maize, we're going to have year, crop, we're going to have the value of crop here. So we're still going to have 1961, but now we're going to have maize here in crop, and we're going to have the value of maize here, right? So it's just going to be the same thing across all of this. That's what's going to happen. So if I do that, let's just give the first 5. So you see that that's what is happening at this point. And then I go ahead and try to plot this, right? Because I want us to see first with a bar chart. So just to be sure we are not missing, okay, yes, we are not missing anything. Total production of crops. So yes, this is, for now, this is just a bar chart, right? We can see a stacked bar chart, right? We can see all of the things that are contributing to the total, right? So how the various crops are contributing to like the total of what we see per year, right? So we can see we can already see an interesting trend. Oh well, what do we have here? Total produced. Why is crop total produced? Tooltip, yeah. Crop. Ah, okay. Okay. So yes, we did not let go of that total produced. Please, my mistake. Apologize. We need to get rid of that. So we can do this again. Try this again. Yeah, this is correct. So we look at this and we have wheat and we have tomatoes, we have sugarcane. It's an interesting trend because we see that sugarcane it has the highest proportion that we can see amongst the crops that, which is interesting, right? Makes you wonder like what is the economic value of sugarcane, right? If you didn't already know. So you makes you want to investigate that some more. Now, here I just want to quickly try this other one so before our class ends. So we have a line graph here. And here we also see this, right? But now I want to show us one other thing here. Yeah. So now see where this really, the beauty of this really comes out. I'm just the beauty of this really comes out. We see this trend, right? So this is not the total production of crops. Total production by crops. Yeah, whatever. So we see, I mean, whichever one works, right? We see this and we can see that there's a trend, right? But it can be a little difficult to follow. We can see trends, right? It takes attention to like the trend for a particular crop. So you follow the trend for a particular crop and it leads you through the highs and the lows. Now, when you come and look at this, you can see a trend across several crops. You can see an interesting dip around here. So this is like one of the one of the key cases for why you need to, when you're exploring data, you need to try different charts. Ordinarily, you wouldn't observe that here. It's not very obvious to see. But then when you come here, you can see this dip, right? You can see that most of them have a similar dip around the same year. So it's an interesting observation and you want to investigate it some more. Okay. So, but we'll be stopping the class there for now, for today, because that time is up. It's already 4 o'clock. But I will be sharing this notebook with you guys. And hi, Mercy. Hello, Mercy. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Can I now share notebooks in the current Zoom session? I previously
Yeah, you
didn't have
can share.
permission to do that.
Is that?
So let me try. I previously didn't have permission to do that. So let me try and then you.
Just share it with the link to the notebook here. That's
So let
all.
me
You don't
try
need
now
to
so that you know. I previously tried and I couldn't share.
Oh,
Let
okay.
me see. So I still can't share. Not even allowed. Mercy, I still can't share.
How is that even possible? I don't know how you still can share, but you have access to the notebook.
So, okay, I'm getting that transfer of the extension, the notebook extension is not allowed. So that's the challenge by the admin. So I don't know, maybe you need to look into the admin permissions, what I'm allowed to share.
Please, can you send me the general folder now? Let me just go there and see if I can quickly help you share.
Okay. All right, guys. I need to know how many people are in this class. And then afterwards, we'll share the notebook with the mail. Since we already have your mail, we'll fix this so that in the next class is a lot easier to share via the class right here in the session as opposed to sharing it via emails. So, but is there any question before we end the session? Any question, guys?
Hi.
Yeah, hello.
So concerning the data sets
Hello,
we're not
ma'am.
able to access.
Yeah, someone is already talking. Please go on.
Guys, maybe you should move your questions to another time because Ade is already waiting. The next class is already waiting.
All right, so please, the two people with questions, please, in the next class or in the chat, please feel free to drop your
So
questions in the
can I
Slack
just do
channel.
it quickly? So the data sets, would we get an extension for the submission since we can't access
Sorry,
it or we
please,
haven't
you
been
really have to go now.
Okay. All
Thank
right,
you.
I've noted your question. I'll respond in Slack. All right, thank you, everyone. Bye.